Hi, Kate. Pat Welch here. This is my final video. And I just wanted to thank you for the class. I think it was a really great class. I learned a lot about different Adlerian approaches and interviewing approaches. And I think most importantly, I learned a lot about myself. Being able to do the early recollections and the genogram myself was really helpful in understanding the process and actually what I learned about myself. So I'd like to answer some of the questions that you had posted. The Adlerian approaches that I think that I would use with the population that I particularly work with are pretty congruent with some of the belief systems within the culture as well. As you know, I work with Native American adolescents. I think I now would really like to start working with adults as well. I never thought I'd like working with adults, but after doing the videos, even though they were acting, it was still really helpful, and I really actually enjoyed it. So I think that's something I'm going to think more about. As far as the actual approaches to interviewing, I think, first of all, I'd like to look at the questions. I think the questioning was really valuable to me in looking at the different styles and which would apply best, I think, with some of the kids I work with. The open question, I think, is one of the best that I find. I think that being able to ask that question allows the person to be able to give an answer as opposed to yes or no, which kids are really good at. And then also the indirect and implied. I think that also shows empathy. Being able to state it must be whatever. I think that that's really important because it does show the empathy as far as even trying to understand maybe what their issue is. Read description. I like that one. Pointing out some of the accomplishments of the client and how they're handling some of the situations. Scaling, I think, is great. I use scaling somewhat. I'm going to be using it more. I think it helps identify, and especially for adolescents, helps them focus on really where they're at and maybe even helping them to learn how to regulate, which would be great. The presuppositional, the what if, just suppose. I think that that also presents options for them to really think about and further expand on their answers. The big one, I think, for me is the miracle question, and I know you and I had spoken about the question several times. I think that's one of the most important, and I also feel I don't take it lightly. And I think that it also really implies what it is that the person really is afraid of. And I just think I just really want to learn how to use that better. Now, as far as some of the other approaches or techniques, I think within an indigenous paradigm, the genogram is great. Also, the family constellation is totally appropriate and can be expanded beyond just like the blood relatives, because in our community we have such an extended family that doesn't necessarily mean a blood relation. So this can provide that venue or that arena where we can really look at the full extent of our families and how they impact us and those relationships. The early recollections. Now, I love the early recollections, and I really want to be able to use those. I think that being able to look at all of to look at the feelings that are involved in them and our relationships in those early recollections, I think has a profound impact on who we are today and how we move through the world. And it really does talk about our movement and also our belief systems. Psychoeducation, I think, is very important. I think that psychoeducation provides some empowerment. I think once we know what's going on, or we know how to deal with what's going on, we have more options. And I think it's much more empowering. Now, as far as identifying my strengths, I think I'm a good listener. I'm able to reflect back what the person has said, almost in a way of paraphrasing. There are two things to that. It's twofold. I think one part is that it lets the person know that I'm actually listening. And the other is in paraphrasing it back or reflecting it back, it's also allowing the person to really hear what they're saying. So I think that's one I think is very valuable, and I think I'm pretty good at that. I think I'm asset-based. I think I'm pretty good at finding the positives in people's behavior. I think that looking at coping skills that might not be the most appropriate for now, I can also let them know that at some point they were useful, and that they did a really good job protecting themselves or doing whatever they needed to do in order to cope. But also now is a better time. Now it's maybe some other coping skills might be better. Let's see, analogies. I think I'm really good at analogies. I enjoy doing analogies because for me, it's like I'm listening to what they're saying, I'm taking it inside, I'm kind of processing it, and then I'm putting it back out. And maybe that has to do with being an artist. But I find that really useful. Let's see, I think, now what are my areas for growth? I think I could trust myself more. And I think that's just going to take practice and take some time. And I really want to use the question. I want to become very proficient at using the question. And I know that's also going to take some time and practice. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I wanted to thank you again for the class and just all the information and for everything I learned. Goodbye.